When you choose to gaslight the public, you have become exactly what you knew that we hated when we sent you into DC. Um, More dishonest politicians assuming that they are smarter than the people that they govern over. And they're not. They simply aren't.
So recently, Candace Owens got right to the point, deep and direct about why she no longer supports Donald Trump, what he's done wrong, why he's betrayed his base to some extent. And what I thought was interesting here is she points out the two major things that has led her in this direction. So let's take a look at this. Let's get her thoughts on it. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
We should talk about Trump a bit, actually, because your sort of history with Trump is quite interesting. You were a keen supporter. He was a fan of you. He was appreciated you and recognized that you were an powerful, important media voice. And then it seems you've completely fallen out, and largely over Gaza. Am I correct in saying that?
You are correct in saying that. There's just certain things that you can't look away from. And what's happening in Gaza, to me, is it's just a moment. Are you a human or are you not a human? And I have just been, and also the Epstein fumble as well, the gaslighting of the Epstein case, running on that, saying, we all understand that there is real power and there's real corruption. And then to effectively gaslight your supporters and say, why are we still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? What do you mean, why are we still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? If there's been a blackmail ring and politicians are supporting things because they have been blackmailed, we need to know that's very important. So I've been very disappointed in him.
Why do you think?
Yeah, interestingly enough, that does make sense in a lot of ways, and it kind of betrays one of the cornerstone principles of the Trump campaign. If you're going to name your slogan after America First, if that's going to be your creed, your mantra, that's what you're running on, the top level talking point, and then you're just going to keep funneling money to Israel while they committed genocide right now, shelve U.S. interests in negotiating with Iran for the sake of a war on the side of Israel against Iran, if you're just going to keep allowing them to expand the West Bank settlements, unfurl hate speech laws that target critics of Israel in the United States, encourage that, push those in the American states, you're truly a supervillain, and you're not America first, you're Israel first. So I totally get Candace in that way. Same thing with Epstein, a grand cover-up, and they made transparency another focal point of this campaign. Trump's going to be this white knight that marches in there and reveals the dark secrets about Epstein that Biden was concealing for so long, except for he doesn't. And not only doesn't he calls you stupid and not a true supporter if you still want answers on that, and calls it a Democratic hoax. So yeah, I'm with Candace on both those things.
He did fumble the Epstein story. I mean, do you buy this, what the Wall Street Journal's reporting, that he's in the files, that he sent this card, this birthday card to Jeffrey Epstein?
I don't buy the birthday card because Trump immediately came out and said this is not true and sued. But it is interesting that regarding him being in the files, when that was reported, it might have been Reuters who reported that, they said that he was surprised in May when Pam Bondi sat down for a meeting and said, you're actually in these files. He never debunked that. He never said that report was not true. And it makes the most sense given the timeline of how quickly he flipped from the Epstein story. Like February, they're talking about it. March, they're talking about it. Then all of a sudden in May, he's going, why are we still talking about Epstein? So something shifted. And I think that likely makes sense. Now, do I believe that Donald Trump was on Epstein Island? No. Do we know that he partied with Epstein in his youth? Yes, we know that. Trump has never been a drinker. He's never done drugs. But in looking into this story, Trump did run Miss Universe for a very long time, and we know that Epstein's interests. He was always involved in casting women through these companies that he was trafficking. I think it's Jean-Luc Brunel was running a modeling agency that he was apparently trafficking women through. It might be that he got caught up, and again, I'm totally surmising here. There's no evidence of this. I want to be clear, and I'm just thinking logically, he could have accidentally gotten caught up in something and not recognized it. The bigger point is that he could have come to his supporters and said, look, I'm very surprised to hear this. I have nothing to do with anything that happened on that island. He could have gotten ahead of it. When you choose to gaslight the public, you have become exactly what you knew that we hated when we sent you into DC.
Yeah, she's exactly right there, and they've responded to this in the worst possible way, in a manner that only invites, new theories about Trump's involvement and whether he was involved in some of Epstein's crimes. Now, I'm the kind of person that thinks that birthday card thing, which other sources then claim, Clinton wrote a birthday message. I think Clinton's denied that birthday message too, is essentially a red herring. What isn't a red herring is who was involved in Epstein's crimes? Which intelligence services, if any, was he tied to? Because a lot of circumstantial evidence surely points in the direction that he was a Mossad agent or involved in Israeli intelligence to some extent. He was, the closest of friends with Ehud Barak, who visited him after his child molestation conviction, the first one that happened in 2008. Ehud Barak visited him 30 times, stayed at his house for prolonged periods. He was the protege of Robert Wexner. He had connections to Ari Ben-Menashe, who said that Epstein was a Mossad agent. He ran in circles with Douglas Leese and Adnan Khashoggi in the 80s during arms trafficking deals and the Israel side of Iran-Contra. All these things point in the direction of him being associated with intelligence services and a potential blackmail operation that was this sex trafficking. And for Trump to just cover this up and for them to be so contradictory about things they said earlier, there was a client list on Bondi's desk, then there wasn't. We had thousands of hours of tape of Epstein molesting children, and then no, it just turned out to be child porn. All these things just are indicative of a cover-up. They reek of a cover-up, and they've just been so bad in responding to these things. It seems like a betrayal. It seems like a betrayal that gets at the base of what was emblematic of the Trump presidency, talking so much about getting rid of secrecy and this web of elites that control things and override our preferences with their, twisted priorities.
More dishonest politicians assuming that they are smarter than the people that they govern over. And they're not. They simply aren't.
On Gaza, Candice, I think a lot of people, probably most of the world now, agrees with your position that what Israel is doing is morally unacceptable, abhorrent, etc. But I think there's a lot of suspicion of you that you have gone from that into full-on Jew hatred. How do you respond to that allegation of anti-Semitism?
Well, first and foremost, I do feel somewhat vindicated because initially when the press began referring to me as an anti-Semite and taking things that I had said out of context, it was only because I had taken an earlier position on Gaza. Everyone got there now. I was there 2 years ago. And so I went through the coals. And that's why I say it's so important to commit yourself to the truth, even when there's a peer pressure campaign to say the other thing, even when you're being called an anti-Semite. Now you're seeing Jews are being called anti-Semitic. People that live in Israel are being called anti-Semitic and being called self-hating Jews who are saying what my government is doing is they are committing a genocide.
Yeah, this is how she's responded, inviting good Jews that are anti-Israel dissidents onto her show, like Dave Smith. She's totally right. They'll call anyone anti-Semitic just if you criticize the government of Israel. You won't necessarily be called anti-American if you criticize a particular American state or a particular government other than Israel. But if you criticize Israel, the natural response is that, you're anti-Jewish or a Jew hater. They've done this even to good dissidents that are Jewish, like Norm Finkelstein, who criticizes Israel. He's a bona fide Jew. He's the son of Holocaust survivors, and they've still done it to him. They've done it to Glenn Greenwald. They've done it to Jeff Sachs. They've done it to Andrew Mate. Aaron Mate. They've done it to Max Blumenthal and others. That is true. She's exactly right.
I was early to that party, like I'm early to the Brigitte Macron party. Of course, it is such a nonsense. Anybody who cared to do any due diligence into my life, it's a nonsense to say that I have hatred for Jews. I worked for Prager University. It is a literal Zionist enterprise that is run by an IDF intelligence, Marissa Straight. I then worked for the Daily Wire, which is run by Ben Shapiro. Prior to that, I worked in private equity for two Jews in New York for 4 years. And I almost married a Jew, actually, while I was in New York. And so they're obviously not doing that because they believe it. Like I said, any incursion into my past and my history would debunk this. I grew up in a remarkably Jewish town just outside of New York City. But I am not, I'm the same girl that stood up to Black Lives Matter, right? I don't care about your identity. I know when people are calling people racist because they are trying to stop the conversation. It was very tough when I said I don't support Black Lives Matter as a Black person. You're a self-hating Black. I am definitely sharpened. I know exactly what's happening when you start using your identity as a shield, and it just doesn't work with me. What's happening in Gaza is atrocious.
Right, an identity isn't a shield or a weapon. You still have moral culpability for wrongdoing, and that goes for if you're Christian, if you're Jewish, if you're Muslim, if you're any kind of nationality or religion or ethnic group or culture, that remains true. And she's absolutely right. The Zionist right especially wields that anti-Semitism card the same way that liberal wokesters wielded the racism card to shut down the conversation, to get away from it, to divert from producing an actual opinion that can defend this and justify it. Because let's face it, you can't justify what's going on in Gaza. So she's exactly right there. And you can see how support for Israel and unending support for Netanyahu and the genocide in Gaza and the wars in the Middle East. This happened on behest of Israel for the overthrow of Assad, which the U.S. tried to do, didn't eventually happen until the end of 2024. The overthrow of Gaddafi in Libya. These were at the behest of Zionists who want to embrace the clean break strategy and get away from the Oslo Accords that represented peace with Israel's Arabian neighbors, and instead just, topple regimes that Israel didn't like, even to the extent of the U.S. supporting al-Qaeda forces in Syria just a decade removed from 9/11. So yeah, the Israel first mentality is a plague. I'm so glad that Candace is exposing it. Trump's close connection with Netanyahu and just doubling down on defending him and pleading with Israel's legislature to drop their corruption and fraud charges against him. It just shows you how deeply the talons of the Israel lobby are sunk into our ruling class, not only members of Congress, but also the president. So I say the two reasons that she holds against Trump for not wanting to support him now are just ones. I think they're very defensible. She articulates it very well. And Americans are waking up, even Americans on the right, many of which supported Trump. And many of the dissidents that supported Trump because they saw absolutely nothing redeemable about Kamala Harris. They might have, held their nose and voted for Trump at the ballot box, not especially loving him, but not liking the opposition even more. They are very disappointed. And, most dissidents seem to have jumped ship over these two issues and others. Ukraine's another one. He's arming Ukraine. He's growing government beyond the bounds of what many people thought. Despite Doge's projections of $2 trillion in government cuts, we've only got net gains in spending, more debt. We just crossed the 37 trillion debt threshold. And that's where we're at. We don't see much tangible policy shift. The rhetoric has sometimes been better on the side of Trump than it has the Democrats, to be sure, but that doesn't manifest in good policies. I think Candace is right on the mark on this one, but I do want to hear from you. Let me know down below. Do you fault Trump for these two things, or are there other things you fault him for more? Do you think Candace is right about this? What could be done, if anything, for Trump to salvage your support of him? Let me know in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the Spectator TV station that had this program on it. Really appreciate them for interviewing Candace. And please consider becoming a YouTube member. If you click the join button below, you can help support the channel. And as thanks for that, I will give you access to all my videos before they go live to the general public on my channel. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.